1954, the Mocambo nightclub on Sunset Strip, the most exclusive venue in Hollywood. Frank Sinatra performed there, Judy Garland, Nat King Cole, every major star in America. But there was one voice they refused to let on their stage, the greatest jazz vocalist of the 20th century, Ella Fitzgerald. Why? Because Ella Fitzgerald was black, and Mocambo's owner, Charlie Morrison, had a policy. Black performers could only appear if they were already famous enough that white audiences demanded them. Ella wasn't famous enough yet, so Morrison kept rejecting her. Then Marilyn Monroe made a phone call that would change everything. Not just for Ella Fitzgerald, for every black performer in America. Because what Marilyn did next wasn't just an act of kindness. It was an act of strategic brilliance that exposed Hollywood's racism and forced one of America's most segregated venues to integrate. For Ella Fitzgerald, this was about survival. Despite being one of the most talented vocalists in America, she couldn't get bookings at major venues. Jazz clubs in Harlem, yes, but the big money venues in Hollywood and Las Vegas closed to her because of her skin color. Norman Granz, Ella's manager, and a white Jewish man who'd been fighting segregation for years, had been trying to get Ella into Mocambo for months. Charlie Morrison kept saying no. "She's not the right image for our club," Morrison said. Translation, she's not white. For Marilyn Monroe, the stakes were different but just as significant. In 1954, she was Hollywood's biggest sex symbol. Studios marketed her as the dumb blonde. Beautiful, sexy, non-threatening, definitely not political. If Marilyn publicly challenged racism, she risked her career. Studios didn't want their stars involved in controversial issues like civil rights. They wanted Marilyn selling movie tickets, not fighting segregation. For Charlie Morrison and the Mocambo, the stakes were financial and social. Mocambo catered to wealthy white audiences. If he integrated his club, would those audiences stay, or would he lose his most profitable customers? This situation would test whether beauty could be weaponized for justice, and whether Hollywood's biggest star was willing to risk everything for what was right. But here's what nobody expected. Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald had never met. They didn't know each other personally. They moved in completely different circles. Marilyn in Hollywood films, Ella in jazz clubs. So how did Marilyn even know about Ella's situation? And why would the biggest movie star in America risk her career for a jazz singer she'd never met? The answer reveals something about Marilyn Monroe that Hollywood spent years trying to hide. The story begins with Norman Granz, Ella Fitzgerald's manager and the founder of Verve Records. Granz was a fierce opponent of segregation. He'd been arrested multiple times for refusing to play segregated venues. He insisted on integrated audiences for all his jazz at the Philharmonic concerts. He'd literally gone to jail fighting for his artists' rights to perform for mixed-race audiences. By 1954, Granz had a specific goal: get Ella Fitzgerald booked at Mocambo. Not just for one night, for a full week, because a week-long booking at Mocambo would establish Ella as a major star. It would open doors to Las Vegas, to New York's top clubs, to national television. But Charlie Morrison kept saying no. Granz tried everything. Offered to reduce Ella's fee, offered to guarantee ticket sales. Nothing worked. Morrison's excuse was always the same. "She doesn't have the right look for our clientele." This was racist code language. Mocambo had hosted black performers before, but only ones who were already so famous that white audiences demanded them. Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong. If you were black and already a household name, Morrison would book you. But Ella wasn't a household name yet, and Morrison wasn't willing to take that risk. In early 1955, Granz was having dinner at a Hollywood restaurant. He was venting his frustration about the Mocambo situation to a colleague. At the next table sat someone who overheard the entire conversation. Someone who understood exactly what Morrison's "she doesn't have the right look" comment really meant: Marilyn Monroe. According to Granz's later interviews, Marilyn approached his table and introduced herself. She said she'd overheard them talking about Ella Fitzgerald, and she asked a simple question: what would it take to get Charlie Morrison to book her? Granz was surprised, but honest. If someone famous enough, someone Morrison couldn't say no to, personally requested that he book Ella, he'd probably do it. But it would have to be someone whose star power was undeniable. Marilyn thought for a moment. Then she said something that shocked Granz. What if I told Morrison that I'd come to Mocambo every single night of Ella's opening week and sit in the front row? Would that be enough star power? Granz stared at her. You're serious? Completely serious, Marilyn said. Call him right now. Tell him Marilyn Monroe will be front row center every night of Ella's first week. See what he says. Now, to understand why this offer was so powerful, you need to understand what Marilyn Monroe's presence meant in 1955. Marilyn Monroe sitting front row at Mocambo for a week meant press photographers would be there every single night. Newspapers would cover it. Mocambo would be in every entertainment column in America. Other celebrities would come to see Marilyn and incidentally see Ella perform. The club would be packed beyond capacity. Marilyn wasn't offering to perform. She was offering something more valuable, guaranteed publicity and guaranteed packed houses. But there was more to Marilyn's offer than just business calculation. Granz asked her, "Why would you do this? You don't even know Ella." According to Granz's account, Marilyn's answer was simple and devastating. "I know what it's like to be judged by how you look instead of your talent. Ella's being rejected because she's black. I'm underestimated because I'm blonde. It's not the same thing. What she faces is worse. But I understand what it feels like when people refuse to see your real value." She paused, then added, "Plus, it's just wrong. She's the best singer in America, and she can't perform at Mocambo because of her skin color? That's bullshit." Norman Granz made the phone call to Charlie Morrison that same night, and Morrison's response wasn't what anyone expected, because Morrison didn't just agree to book Ella for a week. He tried to make a deal that would exploit both Ella and Marilyn, a deal that revealed exactly how Hollywood's power structure worked and how Marilyn Monroe had learned to outmaneuver it. When Granz called Morrison and explained Marilyn's offer, Morrison's first response was immediate enthusiasm. Marilyn Monroe front row every night for a week? Absolutely. Let's book Ella. But then Morrison added something that revealed his true thinking. And since Marilyn's coming every night, we should raise ticket prices. Double them. Actually, people will pay anything to be in the same room as Marilyn Monroe. Granz was disgusted but not surprised. Morrison was trying to turn Ella's breakthrough moment into a Marilyn Monroe sideshow. The message was clear. We're not booking Ella because she's talented. We're booking her because Marilyn Monroe will be there. When Granz told Marilyn about Morrison's plan to double ticket prices, her response was strategic and brilliant. "Tell him no doubled prices," Marilyn said. "Regular Mocambo prices, because this isn't about me. This is about people coming to hear Ella sing. If he doubles prices, it becomes come see Marilyn Monroe. I want it to be come hear Ella Fitzgerald." Morrison initially refused. Granz called Marilyn back. And this is where Marilyn revealed she understood power dynamics better than Morrison realized. "Tell Morrison that if he insists on doubled prices, I won't come," Marilyn told Granz. "My offer is simple. Regular ticket prices, Ella gets top billing, and I sit in the audience as a fan, not as a promotional gimmick." She continued, "If he wants to make this about exploiting my name to overcharge people, I'm out. But if he wants a week of guaranteed sold-out shows at regular prices with massive press coverage, then we have a deal." This put Morrison in an impossible position. He could accept Marilyn's terms and get guaranteed sold-out shows plus publicity, refuse her terms and get nothing. No Marilyn, no publicity. And Granz would probably take Ella to a competing venue. Morrison caved. Regular prices. Ella's name above Marilyn's in any promotional material. Ella Fitzgerald was booked at Mocambo for 1 week, starting March 15th, 1955. But Marilyn added one more condition that Morrison only learned about later. She told Granz, "Make sure Ella knows this is happening because she's talented, not because I'm doing her a favor. I don't want her feeling like she owes me anything. She deserves this booking on her own merit." This wasn't charity. This was Marilyn using her power to fix a broken system. March 15th, 1955. Opening night of Ella Fitzgerald's week-long run at Mocambo. True to her word, Marilyn Monroe arrived early, sat front row center, brought no entourage, no bodyguards, no publicity team. Just Marilyn in a simple black dress there to watch Ella perform. The press photographers went insane. Flashbulbs everywhere. Every newspaper in Los Angeles would run photos the next day. Marilyn Monroe attends Ella Fitzgerald performance at Mocambo. But here's what the photographs captured that Morrison didn't anticipate. While photographers focused on Marilyn in the audience, they also captured Ella Fitzgerald on stage. Every photo of Marilyn sitting in the audience included Ella performing in the background. Marilyn had positioned herself perfectly. Front row center meant photographers shooting Marilyn would automatically include Ella in the frame. The story couldn't be Marilyn goes to nightclub. It had to be Marilyn goes to see Ella Fitzgerald. Ella's name appeared in every caption. Marilyn had weaponized her own image to force press coverage of Ella's talent. Even more strategic, Marilyn was photographed watching Ella with complete focus, not posing, not performing for cameras, genuinely listening to Ella sing. The photos told a story. Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's biggest star, is captivated by Ella Fitzgerald's voice. But what happened during Ella's actual performance was even more powerful. Ella Fitzgerald was nervous. This was her biggest opportunity. Mocambo was packed, not just with regular audience members, but with Hollywood executives, talent scouts, booking agents. Everyone who mattered in entertainment was there. Part of it was to see Marilyn, but they were all about to hear Ella. Ella opened with A Tisket, A Tasket, her signature song. Her voice filled the room, and something remarkable happened. The audience, which had been buzzing with Marilyn-focused energy, went completely silent, focused, listening, because Ella Fitzgerald's voice was undeniable. It didn't matter what color her skin was. It didn't matter what prejudices people walked in with. When Ella sang, you listened. Between songs, Marilyn did something calculated and brilliant. She stood up and applauded, visibly, enthusiastically, making sure everyone in the room saw that Marilyn Monroe was not just present. She was an actual fan. Other celebrities in the audience followed Marilyn's lead. If Marilyn Monroe was applauding, they would applaud. Marilyn had turned herself into a conductor, directing the room's energy toward appreciating Ella's talent. By the end of the first set, it was clear. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was a coronation. Ella Fitzgerald had just become a star. After the show, Marilyn went backstage. The two women met for the first time in person. According to multiple sources, including Ella's later interviews, Marilyn said something simple. "You're the most extraordinary singer I've ever heard. I'm honored I got to be here tonight." Ella, overwhelmed, started to thank Marilyn for making the booking happen. Marilyn cut her off gently. "You don't thank me. Charlie Morrison should thank you. You just made his club legendary. Every venue in America is going to want you now." This was true. By the next morning, booking offers were flooding in for Ella Fitzgerald. Las Vegas venues that had never responded to Norman Granz's calls were suddenly very interested. Television producers called. Major clubs across America wanted to book her. Marilyn attended all 7 nights of Ella's run, just as promised. Every single night, front row center. By night 3, the press coverage had shifted. Headlines went from Marilyn attends nightclub to Ella Fitzgerald wows Hollywood to new jazz queen crowned at Mocambo. Marilyn's strategy had worked perfectly. But the most important part of this story isn't what happened during that week at Mocambo. It's what Ella Fitzgerald said about Marilyn Monroe decades later, after both women had died. Words that revealed the true depth of what Marilyn had understood about power, exploitation, and using privilege for justice, and why Hollywood tried so hard to bury this story. In interviews given late in her life, Ella Fitzgerald spoke openly about what Marilyn Monroe's actions meant. In a 1972 interview, Ella said, "I owe Marilyn Monroe a real debt." She personally called the owner of the Mocambo and told him she wanted me booked there, and she would take a front table every night. She told him, and it was true, due to Marilyn's superstar status, that the press would go wild. The owner said yes, and Marilyn was there. Front table every night. The press went overboard. After that, I never had to play a small jazz club again. She was an unusual woman, a little ahead of her time, and she didn't know it. That last line is crucial, and she didn't know it. Ella believed Marilyn didn't fully understand how revolutionary her actions were, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Marilyn knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't impulsive kindness. This was strategic use of power. Marilyn understood that her image, the dumb blonde, the sex symbol, gave her a specific type of power in 1955 America. White men in power would do things for her that they wouldn't do for a black woman or for a civil rights activist. She weaponized that power, Here's what makes Marilyn's strategy brilliant. She didn't make it about civil rights publicly. She didn't give speeches about integration. She didn't position herself as an activist. If she had, Hollywood studios would have shut her down immediately. They would have threatened her contract, blacklisted her, ended her career. Instead, Marilyn made it look like a personal choice. I'm a fan of Ella Fitzgerald. I want to see her perform. This was genius because it was unattackable. Studios couldn't punish her for attending a nightclub as a fan. The press couldn't criticize her for having good taste in music. But the effect was identical to public activism. She integrated Mocambo. She launched Ella's mainstream career. She forced Hollywood to acknowledge a black woman's talent. She did it by using the very image Hollywood had created for her, the beautiful, non-threatening blonde who just wants to have fun, as cover for strategic social justice. This is what Hollywood tried to bury, not the Mocambo story itself that became public, but the strategic intelligence behind it. Because if people understood that Marilyn Monroe was this smart, this calculated, this politically aware, the dumb blonde image would collapse. The impact of that 1 week at Mocambo rippled through American entertainment for decades. Within 6 months, Ella Fitzgerald had signed a major contract with Decca Records, appeared on national television, been booked at Las Vegas's top venues, become one of the highest paid performers in jazz. Within 2 years, other major Hollywood venues began booking black performers more regularly, not because of sudden moral awakening, because Ella's success at Mocambo proved it was profitable. Marilyn's strategy showed that integration could be sold to racist club owners as a business decision, not a moral one. And business decisions, they would accept. By the 1960s, when the civil rights movement made segregation legally unacceptable, venues like Mocambo had already been integrated for years because performers like Ella Fitzgerald had proven that talent transcended race, and stars like Marilyn Monroe had forced audiences to pay attention. But here's what Hollywood never wanted you to know. Marilyn Monroe did this knowing it could hurt her career. She did it without publicity team approval. She did it despite studio executives who told her to stay out of politics. She did it because it was right, and she did it smart enough that they couldn't stop her. There's one more part of this story that reveals everything. Years later, after Marilyn's death in 1962, Norman Granz was interviewed about the Mocambo incident. The interviewer asked him, "Why do you think Marilyn Monroe helped Ella Fitzgerald when they didn't even know each other?" Granz's answer, "Because Marilyn understood what it meant to be reduced to your appearance. She was treated like she was nothing but a body. Ella was treated like she was nothing but her skin color. Marilyn saw the parallel." Then Granz said something that should be famous but isn't. The difference was that Marilyn's appearance gave her power in the system. Ella's appearance took power away. So Marilyn used her power to fix that imbalance. That's not charity. That's justice. This is the Marilyn Monroe that Hollywood spent decades trying to hide. Not the tragic victim, not the dumb blonde, not even the talented actress, the strategic activist who understood power structures and knew how to exploit them for good, the woman who saw injustice and didn't just feel bad about it, she calculated how to fix it, the woman who weaponized beauty to fight racism. That's the real Marilyn Monroe. The climax of this story isn't Ella's successful Mocambo performance. It's this: Marilyn Monroe proved that beauty and sexuality, the very things Hollywood used to diminish her, could be weaponized for social justice. She took the cage they built around her and turned it into a weapon. She used the dumb blonde image as camouflage for calculated activism, and she changed music history in the process. Here's what Marilyn Monroe taught us in March 1955. When the system gives you power, even power based on things that shouldn't matter like appearance, use that power to fix the system's injustices. Don't wait for permission. Don't announce your plans. Don't let them see you coming. Just act. Use whatever leverage you have. Make it look simple and personal so they can't stop you. And change the world while they're still trying to figure out what just happened.